Right, loads to get through. Very good morning to you. Good morning to James Savundra as well. 6 days, as I said, remain in this summer transfer window. And Alexander Isak is still very much top of the agenda. Newcastle directors Jamie Rubin and Jacobo Solis visited Isak's home yesterday before the game with Newcastle to hold talks about the striker's future. It remains up in the air, and less than a week of the transfer window remaining. Once again, Eddie Howe was quizzed on Isak after last night's game.
That's the ideal from everyone. Our side, Newcastle's side, is we want clarity. We want to move forward. We want the sort of narrative to change because we're in the start of the season now. We're into the action and we've got to get results and we've got to try and focus on what we can control. No, there's no intentional dig to Alex, but naturally I want players that are committed to Newcastle. That's one of the most important qualities when you put a team out on the pitch that they show. So that's no dig to anybody. That's just every manager will feel the same way.
Now that Newcastle and Liverpool have played each other, was it always unlikely that anything was going to happen before that point? Do we expect things, if anything's to happen, it's going to happen now in the next couple of days?
You would think so, though. The fact that Alexander Isak has been training on his own for such a long period of time, even if he moved to Liverpool over the course of the last few days, he probably wouldn't have featured. But we will get some form of clarity, definitely, over the course of the next few days, because we have the transfer deadline in 6 days' time. Newcastle's stance remains the same, though, that Alexander Isak is not for sale, and they value him at £150 million. However, at the same time, Liverpool are still looking to sign an attacking player before the transfer deadline. They still feel like they're one short on where they were last season. And at the same time as that, Newcastle are actively looking to sign strikers in this transfer window. Yes, they need to replace Callum Wilson, but they also may need to replace Alexander Isak. So there is a chance that things do move if Newcastle are able to line up two suitable strikers over the course of the next 6 days and Liverpool lodge what they deem to be an acceptable offer. It's been reported, and we can report it now ourselves, that Newcastle officials met Alexander Isak yesterday. They visited him at his home as they attempted to convince him to stay at the club. And a new contract would be part of discussions if he was to stay at Newcastle. Newcastle are already in a really good situation because Isak has 3 years left in his contract, but they may find a way to convince him to stay in the Champions League with Newcastle this season, maybe increase his options when it comes to his personal terms. I think he'd get a bumped up contract if he was to stay at Newcastle and commit his future to the club. Eddie Howe wasn't aware of those conversations taking place, but we can confirm that was the case. But I think the fact that Newcastle have struggled to line up a replacement for Callum Wilson, who departed at the end of June, just shows that it's going to be very difficult for Newcastle to get two replacements in for Isak and Wilson over the course of the next few days. So it does feel like a lot needs to happen if Liverpool are to get Alexander Isak. But of course, as we know, in the final few days of a transfer window, things do accelerate. There's more compromise from different parties. They try to get deals done. So I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but a lot needs to happen for this man to be wearing the red shirt of Liverpool next week.
OK, let's get a Liverpool perspective then on this Isak saga. We can cross live to Anfield this morning. Delighted to say we can speak to our reporter, Peter Stevenson. Morning, Peter. The Isak saga is going to run and run, but could it potentially ramp up a bit now that they've got the game out of the way, they've played each other? Is there a feeling that Liverpool may just go in and make another offer before the window closes?
Well, you know, they say in football, timing is everything. And I suspect the view from Liverpool today will be, yes, we've come away from the North East last night with a memorable win and 3 points that keep us at the top of the Premier League along with Arsenal and Tottenham. But now the dust has settled in the cold light of day, what realistically is their next move? And I just wonder whether they're just going to play a patient waiting game. I think what they'll want to know is what the outcome of those talks were between the Newcastle hierarchy and Isak yesterday. That will be critical because if that still shows the player has an intention to leave Newcastle, Liverpool you imagine will feel encouraged in going in with a better offer. If the signals coming out of the northeast are that the player, if you like, has been persuaded, and there's been subtly suggested that he stays at Newcastle, and all manner of options might have made open to him. We don't know the result of those talks, but we'll soon find out. And you would imagine with Eddie Howe desperate for clarity, you have to feel sorry for the guy. I mean, he's had injuries to contend with last night, a suspension, a big defeat at home in front of a passionate crowd. So yeah, the hostility was made very clear to Liverpool last night, but that won't bother them. What will bother them is those talks the player is having directly with the Newcastle hierarchy, and that will be key to determining what happens. But it could be a very long and a very interesting week.
Jamie Carragher last night was critical of Ibrahima Konate's performance in defence. And has this highlighted once again the need to strengthen in that position? Could Liverpool put a bid in for Mike Guehi, for example?
Well, you would have thought that has got to be a priority. You look at the evidence before you. They've beaten Bournemouth 4-2. They've beaten Newcastle 3-2. They've conceded 2 goals in 2 games. Now, I heard on the radio this morning coming in, Liverpool didn't concede 2 goals in a Premier League game till October last season in winning the title. So clearly something isn't just right. That dynamic between the 2 centre-halves and the goalkeeper, especially at set pieces, isn't just right. You look at the way that Bruno sneaked in at the back post for that first header. You looked at the ball over the top for the second Newcastle goal. Very reminiscent of a goal scored here by Bournemouth at the start of the season. So that's clearly an issue. And you look at Arsenal coming to town here on Sunday. You look at the way they play from set pieces. You look at the goals they've already scored from set pieces. That could be very interesting. And if a decision hasn't been made by the weekend, you would imagine that certainly that game against Arsenal will flag up yet again that maybe that is a key area. For some reason, it's not just working. Konate just hasn't found his rhythm yet. Maybe Arne Slot is prepared to give him a bit more time. We'll have to wait and see.
Palace are getting ready for Mark Guehi to leave.
They're already in a situation, Crystal Palace, where they only have 3 frontline centre-backs who are fit and ready to play. And we saw last week in the Conference League that Jefferson Lerma, who's a midfielder, played at centre-back to give Chris Richards a few minutes off. And this would be the sort of signing which definitely would excite Crystal Palace fans. Not excite, never that excited when you sign a defender, but I think it would encourage them, the fact they are planning for life after Mark Guehi. Let's bear in mind, even if Mark Guehi stays by the end of this deadline, it seems unlikely he's going to sign a new contract at the club. So they do need to have some forward planning there when Guehi eventually departs, whether it's now or next summer, because it does feel like, with the options on the table for Mark Guehi, him staying at Crystal Palace seems the most unlikely of those.
Kostas Tsimikas is reportedly finalising a move away from Liverpool this summer as the club continues its squad overhaul under new manager Arne Slot. With the arrival of Milos Kerkez and the consistent presence of Andy Robertson as the undisputed starter at left-back, Tsimikas has seen his opportunities severely limited. The Greek international, who joined Liverpool in 2020 and played an important role in rotation and cup competitions, now finds himself on the fringes of the squad. As a result, both the club and the player are aligned on seeking a fresh start elsewhere. Several clubs across Europe have expressed concrete interest in signing the 28-year-old, with AS Roma, Marseille and Olympiacos among the frontrunners. Tsimikas is understood to prefer a move abroad where he can play regularly and compete in European tournaments, rather than settle for a bit-part role in England. Although Liverpool would ideally like to agree a permanent transfer in the region of £15 million, they have not ruled out a season-long loan if it helps move the player on and maintains his value. While Tsimikas has spoken positively in the past about his time at Anfield and his bond with the fans, the reality of his situation has shifted. With playing time increasingly scarce and Liverpool evolving tactically under Slot, all signs now point toward a summer exit. His departure would close a chapter in which he provided depth, determination, and one particularly iconic penalty kick during the FA Cup run. As Liverpool push ahead with a younger, more competitive squad, Tsimikas is expected to begin a new journey, potentially in Serie A or League One, in the coming days.